Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on, to explain what's going on, and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong. This video comes from Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, and its original presentation is 37 minutes long. So, I will not be able to play the entire thing and then go back and talk about stuff. I will have to intermittently pause here and there to talk about things as it goes along and then hit play. So here we go.
My name is Sheriff John Allen. A couple things before we get started. I want to acknowledge a couple people within our department. Hopefully that everybody has been seeing the excellent work that our deputies, civilian staff, call takers, and dispatchers have been doing here in Bernalillo County. So I want to throw a shout out to them because they're actually doing a lot of difference for our community, making a difference in this crime wave that we're seeing, and we'll continue to do so. Also, so we're very transparent up front, the way these deputy-involved shootings briefings will go on is every one of them will be different. And what I mean by that is the time frame. And what I mean by the time frame is it depends when we interview our deputy, how many deputies that we have involved, the complex issue of investigations, how they are. It'll never be 2 or 3 days. I'll be very upfront right away. We will always make sure that we do a thorough investigation, and sometimes it might be 2 days, and another one it might be 5 or 6 days. But we'll always make sure that you have all the information that is needed when we do briefings such as this. Later on down the road, because of adjudication purposes and things that go through on with the courts, we will have a YouTube channel to make sure that the whole incident is caught with narrative, overhead maps, body-worn cam, and any other information that we have, so all of you, we can get your questions answered and that we're totally upfront about the investigations that we are doing. But for here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Chief Deputy Nicholas Huffmeyer to go over the deputy-involved shooting itself, and then I'll answer some questions later.
That's good. I like their approach to that. I like it when agencies are very transparent and want to put all the information out there. That is honoring the merit of the open records laws. People should know what their government is doing. Almost, I'm not going to say all, but almost all documents should be viewable by the public. Now, there are certain things that public should not see. Social security numbers, personally identifying information that could be damaging for that person, that could cause identity theft, something like that. And things that relate to national security. Like, obviously, we don't need people being able to look at nuclear secrets and stuff like that if they don't have a need-to-know basis. So, good on them for being as transparent as they can be with their open records.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon, everyone. As the Sheriff mentioned, we are here to give you a breakdown of the details of the deputy-involved shooting that occurred on March 12th, the location of which is 224 Atrisco Vista Boulevard. That is a mobile home community, again, on Atrisco Boulevard, Atrisco Vista Boulevard within the county. So the agenda for this afternoon, it'll be I see some familiar faces in the room. It'll be a relatively familiar format for you. I'm going to provide you with a slide with some case information. In the event that you want to IPRA any of the information, there's going to be some details on the screen that you'll need, the CAD number, the case number, etc. And as with our other deputy-involved shooting briefings, we'll provide you with a thumb drive. Is that correct, Jamie? Is it on a thumb drive? We'll provide you with a thumb drive at the conclusion of today that will have everything that you're seeing on the screen. So you're not going to leave today empty-handed. So the case information, a timeline, as we know it currently, the details that happen starting with the initial dispatch call all the way through the conclusion of the call and the shooting itself. There's 2 sets of video that we'll show you. One is the 911 dispatch call, and there were many 911 calls that happened over the course of the incident itself, as well as a video compilation of the body camera footage. As you can imagine, an incident of this magnitude, there's a tremendous amount of footage. You're welcome to IPRA that footage and watch every single second of it if you like. It's just not in a presentable format for a press briefing. So we've put together what we think are the most critical portions for you to view today, and that will include some of the negotiations that took place with the suspect and one of our deputies on scene who was trying to de-escalate the incident. The shooting itself, which was captured on a dash camera from one of our vehicles, and then some of the other footage. This is at nighttime, so some of the other footage is relatively dark, but you can still hear the audio and get a sense of what's happening in real time there with the deputies that are on the scene. We also have a collection of some evidence photos that were taken by CSI as they're processing the scene. And then we have a pretty extensive amount of suspect information, as the sheriff is going to discuss later on this afternoon, about some of the concerns that we have with this individual being on the street and even being out in the community, able to commit some of the crimes that he has. And so I'll leave that for the sheriff to discuss, but there's definitely a story to be told there, not necessarily about the shooting itself, which the evidence will speak for itself, I think, on the screen, but the story about why is this individual out in our community repeatedly victimizing people. So the sheriff is going to discuss that specifically, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. We have the CID team here as well, the lead investigator. If you have questions that I'm not able to answer, we can defer that over to them. So we'll proceed. So with the case information slide, again, the date, March 12th. The start time of the initial dispatch call, 3:54 in the morning. Again, the location, 224 Atrisco Vista Boulevard Southwest, is trailer number 613. Our lead case agent's name is there. The case and CAD number are there. Again, that will be included on the thumb drive. You'll be provided today in the event that you want to IPRA any of that information for your own investigation, your own news releases there. The timeline, I know the font is a little bit small. I'm going to read all of these because I do believe that they're important to establish what exactly was happening throughout the course of the call, because we're not going to be watching hours and hours of video this afternoon. So at 3:54 in the morning, a female victim calls into BCSO dispatch advising that the suspect, Jose Santillano, was in her residence and was armed with a gun. A minute later, the victim sets the phone down out of fear, and you're going to hear that. She indicates to dispatch that if the offender, the suspect, sees or hears her on the phone and that he believes that she might be on the phone with the police, that he would hurt her. 3:59, Jose is heard on the 911 recording saying that he heard her say his name and asked if she was talking to police. Victim gets on the line with our dispatchers there at 4:16 in the morning saying, "Hurry, I can't talk." 4:21 in the morning, deputies arrive and set a perimeter. One of the first things that I looked at from a response side was 3:54 versus the 4:21 timeline. Our deputies got there much sooner. They had to wait outside of the gate of the mobile home park because the gate code that we had been provided from the facility had been changed and we weren't notified about it. So I recognized right away that response time is longer than our average response time for a priority one call, almost double. But the deputies were outside and couldn't get into the facility, so they were delayed in responding. 4:23 in the morning.
Okay, so at that point, the vehicle can become a battering ram. That gate, I kind of doubt, is able to withstand the force of a vehicle driving through it. So they could have got in there. A lot of gates that I've seen, the fence that leads from the gate and out, that ends at some point. A lot of times it is not a continuous fence or barrier that goes all the way around, and you can get through on foot. It's just the gate area is designed to prevent vehicles from easily passing through. But you get out, you can most of the time easily pass through. Now, there are some places that are set up a little bit better and you can't get through on foot. What was this place like? I don't know. I have not seen all of this yet. Have not done any research on this myself to to know the kind of layout or anything like that. I was actually looking at that response time myself and thinking, wow, that seems like a really long time. And then I thought, well, this is a sheriff's office, and some counties are very large, and sometimes deputies are on the whole other side of the county, and it takes some amount of time to cross the entire county to get to the other side. So with that being said, response time's going to be long anyway. As an armed citizen, this is something that you have to think about as an armed citizen. Response times. It may be just a couple minutes for a response time, but that 2 minutes can be an eternity. And if you don't have the tools to defend yourself, to save yourself, you're gone, you're dead. The best response is an armed response. You are always going to be at your own emergency. No one other than you will be extremely motivated to save your own life. You will be the only person 110% motivated to save your own life. All right, moving on.
The victim is able to safely exit the residence, and a man is seen behind her. That is the suspect who remained inside. 4:31, deputies begin PA announcements outside in an effort to get Jose to come outside and surrender peacefully. 4:32, one of our deputies on scene announces over radio that he observes the subject is armed with a rifle. 4:37, a sergeant on scene confirms with the victim that we did have felony charges. Those charges from that night were aggravated assault with a deadly weapon that he committed against the original calling party there, that victim that called at 3:54. 4:54 a.m., Jose's doing a variety of things inside the residence, turning lights on and off, going from room to room, and he is looking out of one of the windows. You'll see where the shooting ultimately happens, which it appears as though he was looking for targets, potentially our deputies. 4:59, one of the deputies on scene I talked about a little bit earlier that you'll see in the video, who was negotiating with the subject, has phone contact with him. He tells her explicitly that he wants the SWAT team to come, that he's armed, and in fact later on goes on to say that he's going to kill one of the deputies on scene. 5:03 in the morning, deputies begin evacuating nearby trailers. We have some knowledge, the ballistics of rounds going through trailers, the danger to some innocent life in the surrounding trailers. We believe that it was necessary at the time to start evacuating as many of those people as we could. 5:09, Jose fires a single gunshot out of the trailer. And I'll show you on the evidence slides some of the impacts of the rounds that the suspect fired that went out of his own trailer, out of the windows. They impacted some of our vehicles, marked patrol vehicles, as well as a neighboring trailer. 5:14 a.m., once Jose gets back on the phone, he tells that same deputy, "I'll kill one of you guys, I promise I will." That's a quote. 5:20 a.m., Jose fires a single gunshot at a BCSO vehicle out of the south window, and deputies do confirm that he is using a rifle at the time. 5:22, Jose continued shooting, and the deputy that ultimately was in the exchange of gunfire with the suspect returns fire from a prone position, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment on the video. Between 7 a.m. and 7:52 a.m., so almost an hour, Jose is repeatedly calling in to dispatch. We're continuing PAs and trying to get this subject to surrender peacefully even after the shooting has occurred. He calls in multiple times to dispatch, indicating that he needs help, and credit to our dispatchers, we were able to get him to come out of the house and surrender without further loss of life or injury. So we'll go on to the first set of video. As I mentioned, this is going to be the initial 911 call.
Bernalillo County 911, what is the address of the emergency? 224 Atrisco Vista Boulevard, Southwest, trailer 613. If this is, I just gotta talk.
Jose Ramon Santillano he is here, very paranoid. He has, I don't know if it's a machine gun or a big black rifle, I don't know. But what they use in the Army movies, so it's a big arm's length gun, rifle or something. I took a lot of medicine, and he said he was banging on the door, and just automatically I opened it, and he walked in.
Do you have a restraining order?
Do I have to have one? I don't. I haven't gone by there. Two cops were out here yesterday. To file charges on me because he broke into my casita yesterday. So I haven't been able to go on. It's the weekend, so.
Did he get there on foot or in a vehicle?
There's no vehicle. He's probably on board. He's very paranoid.
Does he think you're using drugs?
Yes. I gotta go.
Stay on the phone with me even if you can't talk.
I can't.
Just stay on the phone with me even if you
He
can't
will
talk.
hurt me if he sees me on the phone.
I still want you to stay on the phone with me and just don't hang up the line. You can put the phone down.
So she does put the phone down. Thankfully, she doesn't hang up. So over the course of what happens the next several hours, or hour or so until she comes out of the residence, we were able to at least get some audio, some intelligence there for the deputies on scene and the dispatchers. So she did leave the phone on, but put it down, and then she ultimately leaves the residence. So we'll go on to our next video package. We pause it just right there so I can explain what we're seeing. So the split screen here, the deputy that was involved in the shooting, that is Deputy Ruckman. This is his lapel mounted camera, so his body worn camera on the left side there. And then one of our marked patrol vehicles, presumably that would have been there for a marked unit presence, providing PA announcements with the in-car PA system. That is the unit that you're looking at on the right-hand side, so that's a dash-mounted camera that doesn't move, so we have that vantage point for the entire incident. I will warn you that Deputy Ruckman does take a prone position, so obviously his camera is face down into the ground, so it's dark, but the audio is still usable to give you a sense of what is happening with him. Go ahead, thank you.
Subject to the extremely paranoid, and we're talking about the cartel killing and stealing, that he wants the SWAT team to come and he wants to take
a shot?
Sorry. Everybody get up and stay here 10 more.
Pause it one more time, Jamie. And just for reference, since we're not looking at an overhead image, Deputy Ruckman is standing, if you were to take the vantage point of the dash cam, he is to the left, right next to the fence between this trailer and the trailer to the left on the screen. So he is just off screen of the dash cam, laying down behind a fence.
The victim into your unit, and we're gonna move you down the street since it's a one-way, so that they can make contact with investigators.
Hey, Jose, we just want to make sure you're okay. We heard something.
Yeah. Now, okay.
You're okay? Did you shoot something?
No, what?
370 or 266, one of you assist with footage.
Well, like I said, we heard a loud pop, and we just wanted to make sure that you were okay in there.
You said right away, it's easy to be done. You said,
Say it again?
you said it was easy to be done.
No, I never said that, Jose. We didn't want you to do that.
I
No,
heard you.
Jose, that's not true. I never said that, and I don't want you to die. I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
I didn't say what you think about me. I don't need your compassion or nothing with us. I don't need it. It is what it is. I mean, I'm no family, nothing. How do you think I am? You think I'm no fucking funny? No, I'm going to let you guys, I promise. I will.
You said you'll what?
Trust me, you guys are bring the part of you like
And again, you can IPRA the entire phone conversation and watch the whole thing. It's quite long. She's on the phone with him for well over a half an hour at various points during the incident. And then you could tell that that phone call takes place after he fires that first shot. Deputies are unsure if he was shooting at them or if it even was a shot, a dynamic situation like that where you're not faced with the person shooting at you directly, but you hear the sound. They're still trying to figure out what's happening. So go ahead.
Subject disconnected and maybe the treatment that he wanted to fill out the report.
She communicates that information as she should to the deputies on scene about the threat that the suspect made.
Okay.
Pause it.
Subject shoot.
It happens pretty fast. If you take some time and go back and watch it again, you'll see the blinds kind of move and the glass shatters. It's dark, so it's a little bit difficult to make it out, but I'd encourage you to go back and watch it a couple times. He shoots through the blinds, and there were 2 rounds that impacted our marked vehicle, one into the bumper and one, I'll show you, pretty shocking, and thankfully nobody was inside the vehicle, is right through the windshield where a deputy's head would be if they were in the driver's seat.
Yeah, 34 is the window. It's not there longer. Confirmed it is a long gun. 370 or 10-4.
Pause it one more time. So what you're about to see, as I mentioned, so if you're looking at the right half of the screen here, Deputy Ruckman is off to the left. You can see the fence in between the 2 trailers. He's where the end of that fence is, and what you're going to see in just a moment is he's going to lay down. We know from interviews that he believed he saw the suspect aiming the rifle through the blinds again, and he went to a position that he thought was the most advantageous for him, presenting the smallest target. The suspect's already shot multiple times. So he lays down, so his video will go dark, but we'll be able to continue to hear and see what's happening through the dash cam.
Stop firing. You saw me 10-4? Multiple shots fired.
You hear the subject running from the suspect. to be shot directly beside me.
So Deputy Ruckman's communicating, you know, can you pause it? Deputy Ruckman's communicating, you know, mid gunfight with this individual. You saw the suspect fire that first shot. Deputy Ruckman returns fire. There's a short pause, and then there's another volley of fire. The suspect actually shoots through his own trailer wall. But I'll show you the evidence photos. It's actually a fairly tight grouping and 100% in the direction of Deputy Ruckman. You hear some audible things from Deputy Ruckman there. He was unsure if he had been shot or not. Some of the debris from the fence had impacted his leg, and in that split second he just wasn't entirely sure if he had been shot. Thankfully he was not, and he was able to respond, you know, consistent with his training and return fire on that subject. Go ahead. Shortly after that, when he makes those radio transmissions, I believe that the sergeant comes on the air and tells him to pull back. Deputy Ruckman stands up and he moves to a position that's going to offer him a little bit more cover. Obviously, trailer walls, very thin, especially when you're dealing with a rifle caliber. The rounds will go straight through it. A wooden fence is no different. That doesn't actually provide us with any cover. So he does the right thing, gets up and moves back at that point. Some of our evidence photos. These were the two weapons that were recovered inside the trailer after our investigators executed the search warrant. We believe that the bottom weapon there, the .223 rifle, is the weapon that the suspect was using at the time. You have a larger caliber AK style rifle there on the top that was also recovered inside of the trailer. There is kind of a black object there on that top image in the upper right hand corner. That's an optic and a mounting platform for the optic to be mounted on that rifle. The pictures of our marked units, the bullet impact on the front bumper, and then that other image that I showed you of the rifle round that goes straight through the windshield, kind of right at the headrest of our marked unit, and then some closer up pictures from CSI of what those impacts look like. So let's look at the large photo here in the middle. So right below the red truck, you can see the evidence markers there on the ground. Those are Deputy Ruckman's shell casings. He was laying down right there where that fence comes to an end in the street. And then you can see off to the right-hand side the corner of the blue trailer where the suspect was firing from. In the lower left-hand corner, some images of the rounds that were impacting the fence that he was partially laying behind, that our deputy was partially laying behind. We're not entirely positive just because of bullet trajectory and the sequence of the rounds that the suspect fired, but this neighboring green trailer had 2 bullet impacts on that side of the trailer where the suspect had been firing. Go ahead. Just another perspective of the scene from down the street. I think you can kind of put together now where that marked unit was that you're watching the dash cam footage from. It's been moved now as they're processing the evidence. That vehicle gets sealed and towed as a standard procedure when it comes to securing all of the evidence within the scene. On the upper right-hand image there, you can see the rods that CSI uses to mark the trajectory of the individual rounds that the suspect was shooting. Now, some of the rounds he shot out of the glass, and that window is now no longer intact. But you can see on the second, what we believe the second volley of fire, where he is shooting through the trailer wall in the direction of the deputy. That could be because he had already been injured at that point. And so he is just aiming in the direction that he believes that the deputy was, maybe possibly not even realizing that he's actually shooting through the trailer instead of the window. Then in the lower right-hand corner there, you can see that the primary location that he was shooting out of initially was that window. And then you can just kind of put 2 and 2 together there and see where those rounds were leaving the trailer wall there.
So, shooting through walls. Traditionally, when you are aiming at a target, the target you can see. Think about a flat range, right? your standard firearms training. You're on the line. Your target is 21 feet away, maybe. It could be closer, it could be further away, but that target is very clear to you. Even when targets are in a shoot house or something like that, they're still pretty visible. You may start to get into no shoot targets where part of the target is obscured by something that you're not supposed to shoot. For example, a hostage or someone standing in front of it. Or there are some targets that are set up to simulate them being somewhat behind cover, but you can still see them to some extent. When you start getting into a little bit more advanced kind of stuff, shooting through things that you cannot see through. You know, for example, this window. You know the person's shot from there, and let's say you saw them duck to the left right here. There's a pretty good chance they're standing on the other side of that. They just ducked out of the window. So there's a technique to deal with that, and that's shoot the freaking wall right there and hit them on the other side. Now, when you do that, are you technically violating a cardinal rule, knowing your target and what is behind it? It's kind of a gray area, in my opinion. We can see the target. Let's say, for hypothetically speaking, and this did not occur in this actual scenario, but let's just hypothetically say that we see the person in the window, and then boom, they duck off to the left right there. Immediately as they duck off to the left, we can potentially fire a few rounds into that wall. There's a high probability that we could hit them, even though we cannot see them. And we also cannot see further past that point either. So this is a technique that has to be done very carefully. It is something that many agencies do not allow for. They say no, can't do it. There are some agencies out there that actually have it specifically written in their policies, and they talk about these kind of scenarios. It is something that, like I said, I think is a bit of a gray area, and when done correctly, can be useful. Now, did the bad guy, was he knowingly shooting through the wall in the direction of the officer on purpose? I don't know. Even the officer doing the presentation said that it's a possibility he could have just been shooting. I guess what he thought was he was shooting out the window, but realistically was not shooting out the window and instead was shooting through the wall. I would guess that was probably an accident on that dude's part. He probably did not intend to shoot through the wall to shoot towards the deputy. He was probably thinking he was aiming out the window, but instead he was a little off and sent rounds through the wall. But just know that that is a technique. That is something that can be done. It's something that you should train for. You should practice shooting through different materials. And the best way to do this is kind of like what the fire departments do. If there's going to be a building that's going to be torn down or something, or demolished, sometimes the fire department gets access to be able to do training in that building. They tear through walls and cut the ceiling up for ventilation practice and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes some police agencies get to play too, and they'll do force on force inside a structure, like SWAT teams, for like an old school that's going to be torn down, or like an old nursing home that's going to be torn down, or something. They'll do, or they can get access to that building before it's completely demolished and do force on force training. That's great for some munitions, but you can't really do a whole lot with live ammo if it's in an urban area. So when it comes to a more rural area, it's can be maybe slim pickings, but if there are opportunities to be able to get a hold of one of these houses or one of these trailers or something that's going to be demolished, it's going to be torn down, it's going to be towed away, whatever. If it can be done, then by all means, go to that place, get the rights to be there, set up your sectors of fire, make sure everything's going to be, safe and good backdrop and all that, and do a ballistics lab. Start shooting through walls and see what your bullets do. You'll be surprised about what bullets can do. A manufactured home like this, you could stand on this side, fire a rifle, and it go completely through the entire house into that one, and possibly even out the other side of the other one, depending on what all kind of stuff's been hit in the middle. So that's something else to think about when returning fire, potentially in a scenario like this. The officer going into a prone position, so he's on the ground and he's firing upwards into the window. So if he misses, those rounds are going to go up, out the wall and upwards. Now they will have to come down at some point, but hopefully those rounds lose enough momentum to where when they finally hit something or just fall to the ground, they're not going fast enough to really cause damage. But that is a good way to alleviate the issue of firing from a standing position straight into this window, missing it, going through that wall, and then going through the wall of this little red trailer right here and going through a room somewhere in that red trailer and hitting someone in there. So this is also where people need to be evacuated from their homes, especially in a mobile home park, because bullets are they're just going to tear right through these thin walls, no problem whatsoever. So evacuating several houses down in a large radius would be something that I think would need to be done. And if people are unwilling to leave, it should be explained to them very clearly, like, hey, you continue to stay here and this dude starts shooting, these bullets going to go through your walls like a warm knife through warm butter.
On the exterior. Some information about our deputy that was involved, Deputy Ruckman. He is a deputy first class. This was his first deputy involved shooting. He has approximately 1.5 years on, and thankfully no major injuries were sustained by him during this incident. Some information about our suspect, and this is where I'm going to hand it off to the sheriff, because the next several slides are going to talk in detail about some of his criminal history, and it's lengthy. Jose Ramon Santillano, 42 years old, and he was a convicted felon, so he was not permitted to own or possess a firearm in the first place, let alone have it in the manner and condition that he did on this incident. So I'll pass it off, Sheriff.
You can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Go to the next slide. Next slide. And that's it, correct. You can go back to the first slide. So some things that are frustrating that I've been telling people and warning people about. As you can see, our subject has an extensive history. It's a violent repeat offender. Why do we have something on February 23rd of this year, and we're lucky that our deputy is not seriously injured, nor the victim who called? Why are they ROR'd and out in our community, reoffending and victimizing all of our community time and time and time again?
He may explain what ROR is. I don't know. I have not watched all this in its entirety. But before it goes any further, in case he doesn't mention what ROR is a type of a bond. So there's a few different types of bonds that would allow a person to be able to secure their way of getting out of a jail while still having pending charges. Other than that, the only way to get out is, if you're being held and you can't make bond, the only way to get out is if you're found not guilty. Or you die and then you get taken out of jail. But other than that, if you've got pending charges, the only way to get out of confinement is pay bond or have a bond. And this could be a cash bond. This could be a partially secured bond. There could be a ROR bond, release on reconnaissance. And that is basically a pinky swear. You don't have to put any money up at all. You don't have to put any collateral up. So like on a cash bond, it could be straight cash. It could be unsecured bond. Or it could be another kind of bond where you put up property. So say you got a house or a car. You could put that up as collateral and say, well, if I don't show up to court, you got the rights to take my car, take my house, take my property, whatever. ROR, that's just holding up your pinky saying, yeah, I promise to come back to court. Scout's honor. And they had 3 slides worth of charges on this guy, serious stuff, and they gave him a pinky promise bond. That's my nickname for it. It's a fucking pinky promise bond.
Frustrating. Domestic violence is also taken lightly here in Bernalillo County, and it needs to stop. If you look at 80% of offenders that have shot at law enforcement, they have a domestic violence history. It's on the board for you to see. 50% of offenders that have shot and killed a law enforcement officer have a strangulation history. Our offender has a strangulation history. He pointed a firearm at a victim in the last incident and threatened the victim while wearing an ankle bracelet. Once again, why are they out in our community re-victimizing and re-offending our community? This is what I've been telling people. Violent repeat offenders do not belong on the streets. Thus, puts us in a bad spot to have a deputy-involved shooting when deadly force is our last resort and our deputy was forced to not only protect the victim that they are servicing in our community, but himself and our other deputies. Once again, why is this offender out in our community re-victimizing and re-offending people of our beloved community? And I'll leave it silent for a minute. Because I guarantee you that nobody can answer my question. So once again, I'm not going to throw people under the bus. If we do not work together and keep bringing these issues up, we're going to have the same problems over and over and over again. And I hope by the next time I'm standing here that I'm not speaking about the same thing. Eventually, we're going to get it and we are going to understand. Our deputies that are out here putting their lives on the line every day have to deal with this nonsense, and they're going to court and trying to keep all of you safe, but then again, coming out and dealing with the same people. Yes, there are people who need help in our community, like I've said before. Yes, there are people that are addicted to narcotics. Yes, there are people, just like in this history, that have a mental health issue, but are self-medicating with narcotics and reoffending and becoming violent in our community. I gave you some stats here, which are the same. They've been that way for the last 10 years. It doesn't change. What it tells you is how violent these offenders that our deputies are dealing with. I wish you could see the reports that I see on my desk every morning on the great job that our law enforcement, including Albuquerque Police Department, is doing to try to keep all of you safe. And I don't need to keep going over why they're released. I think I've made my point. But again, as we go over, and I haven't read for a reason, February 23rd on an ankle bracelet and released in March. And then we get involved in a deputy-involved shooting. We have to fix this. I'm done. I think our community is done. So everybody out there needs to call their lawmakers. And once again, we need to discuss with them the seriousness of these crimes and the lives that are at stake every day. And this is one of the many cases that our deputies deal with. And this is one of the many cases that don't involve a deputy-involved shooting. Why? Because not only are deputies de-escalating and using their training, they're either arresting people or taking them somewhere else for care to make sure, once again, that you are safe. We're going to make a dent in this, I promise you. Questions?
All right, so before he goes any further than that, calling legislators and trying to get some change done. Yes, that's something that is needing to be done. Laws do need to change, and some of the abilities for prosecutors to give plea deals to certain people needs to be statutorily removed. They do not need to be able to have such free reign power to offer such lucrative plea deals to people. If a person is a repeat violent offender, there is no reason why, if they get, for example, an armed robbery charge that could carry a maximum sentence of 15 years, there's no freaking reason, if they've been a repeat violent offender, for a prosecutor to give them a plea deal that only allows them to serve 5 years. That should not even be allowed to happen. Should not even be able to be offered on the table. If they are a repeat violent offender and they do another armed robbery, or this is their first armed robbery, but they have other violent things in their past, they shouldn't get a break. What the hell is it do they have to bring to the table for negotiating? You've been in and out of the system multiple times your whole life. You've proven yourself to be an oxygen thief. You are not a contributing member to society. What do you bring to the table to negotiate such a sweet plea deal to avoid 15 years and getting 5 and only having to serve 20% of that 5 years? It makes no damn sense. So yes, we do need to change the laws. However, we also need to change who's in the courthouse. There's a lot of very liberal-minded people in the courts. And when you look at law enforcement versus the courts, law enforcement, you're going to have more your alpha male types. And yes, granted, the alpha male types, they don't traditionally go to school a whole lot. They don't go to get a master's degree. They don't go long enough to get, law degrees and stuff like that. Now, there are some cops out there who have masters, but by and large, the majority of law enforcement is meat eaters. They're alphas, right? Like, they're just not book heavy kind of people. For the most part, there some are. The courthouse has a lot of people who are book heavy. And what do you find with book heavy people? They're not alphas. They're not meat eaters. A lot of them are pretty damn soft kind of people. And that soft thinking, the let's give them another chance kind of bullcrap, is very, very deep in the judicial side of the criminal justice system. There are certain people, I'll give Kentucky, for example. Here in Kentucky, there are people with the Kentucky courts, the Kentucky Administrative Office of the Courts, who go out of their way to hold workshops for the expungement process. Like, literally, they are paid state employees, and they are out working hard to do workshops to get people's records expunged, going out of their way to do this. Why? Why are our court personnel doing these things? Can't the person just go to the courthouse themselves and do it? Why do we need to be so proactive in doing these things? And you look at other things within the judicial system, and you'll see a lot of kind of really soft, liberal-minded kind of things. For example, one thing that's coming to fruition here in Kentucky is mental court. So we got drug court, right? Now they want to have mental court, or mental health court. And this is going to be disastrous. This is. I can already see the painting on the wall. It's going to be disastrous. These people are going to be claiming, "Oh, I got PTSD. That's why I shot this person." Oh, and then they're going to get into mental court, and they're going to give them, second chances and talk about their feelings and write it crayons in a book, and then get reduced sentencing and get treatment instead of confinement, because that is trauma-informed care. There are some people within the criminal justice system who believe in treatment versus confinement. And it's trauma-informed care. They believe the mindset of the perpetrator is the victim. The armed robber is the victim. The rapist is the victim. The child molester is the victim. They're a victim of something, and that is why they did what they did. So they need treatment so that they won't do this again. And this is coming from people who are book heavy, who spend years in college. All those years in college that all these people collectively have, it sure as hell ain't showing for shit. Things are not getting better at all. They're getting worse, in my opinion. So it's more than just changing laws. Changing laws, I think, could help, because that would limit what these people in the courts can do. It'll tie their hands, so to speak. But we also have to change who's in the courts. And we need to get more meat eaters hitting the books, going to law school, and getting in the courts, who are not going to take a soft-ass approach to these repeat offenders. People who have no problem throwing the book at them and locking them away for either the rest of their life or a good majority of their life. People who will take a stand and do what's right. People who will put in the work instead of just trying to lazy cop out and say, well, we'll give a plea deal and I can put another notch on my belt for a guilty conviction. Oh, I got 200 guilty convictions this year. I'm such a great prosecutor. No, you're not. You fucking suck at your job. Giving out plea deals to repeat violent offenders. All right, enough. This stuff gets under my skin. I could keep on ranting, but I'll end it and go back into the video.
You know where he got the rifles?
I will let our investigator go, detective. Come on up.
We've submitted a firearms trace with the ATF, but I haven't got the results back yet.
Okay, they weren't stolen though.
They were not stolen. Any other questions?
How many times was he shot?
He was shot 3 times.
And where was he shot?
He was shot once in the leg, once in the chest, and we believe some shrapnel hit the face.
Okay, I have one more question. As a crime reporter, in the last few weeks and month, I've seen like there was a double homicide. There was, a couple of drive-bys at the same trailer park. I was curious if the sheriff's office is looking into like criminal activity in that area, and if there's any connection with this and those other things, or anything to say about that.
We are looking into criminal activity in that area. I believe we do have a gang attack plan scheduled to be there today around that area. Sheriff, do you know of any other information?
Yes, we have a plan going on right now at 224 Chisco, because we've seen a lot of issues that are going on concerning crime in that area. That's also, we're up there also for community outreach. It's spring break. We also know with the homicides, the violence we've seen, the deputy-involved shooting, the domestic violence incidents, the narcotics incident, we know that we need to start looking into it and providing resources to that area. It is a lower economic area also at the same time, so where are the resources coming from? And are these people being helped? And what can we do as a sheriff's office, other than responding in a negative light, to make sure that we're out there as a tool and a resource for them to help with their success?
Going through that line, have you speak with some of the communities, people in the community, how they feel right now after this incident?
Yeah, they don't feel safe. It's time and time again. So we've had repeated calls out there, and like I said, now we need to put our resources. Just not proactive patrolling just doesn't mean patrolling and arresting people. It also means like something that we're doing today to make sure that we have the resources for people to speak to us, and people also to make sure that they're comfortable with speaking to law enforcement. I guarantee you in this area, there are some undocumented individuals.
And
Are crimes underreported?
okay.
Guarantee you they are.
And, regarding this person, Jose Ramon, I know that he had mental issues that you said, and he was treated with narcotics, but he had received help before, or he hasn't received help before, professional help?
Has he? That's something we're confirming now, and that's something I'll be announcing hopefully next week. Like I said, I'm very concerned about people with mental health issues, at the same time that are trying to self-medicate with narcotics, which makes them more violent, and we're not solving anything. So that's something that the Sheriff's Office is working on as we speak.
We just had the legislative session. Everybody was excited to talk about crime, and that pretrial crime bill was going through. Everybody decided it died. You said call lawmakers, let them know that they're not satisfied with what's going on. We're gonna have another session in a year. Is that too long to do something about these pretrial releases and all that?
1 or 2 days is too long because, again, they're being released on the street. Like I said, I'm not going to throw people under the bus. I'm always about teamwork and working together. This is just yet another example of what's been going on and something we need to work with. I'm telling you, it needs to be adjusted. And we can get into the semantics and all the details of it all day. But the problem is the next day, and offenders out there, that's what our deputies are doing a great job on catching these folks that are committing crime, and hopefully they're not reoffending and it comes to head in something this violent in a situation again. It's something that needs to be entertained once again. And yes, I'll be entertaining and talking to lawmakers myself. I'm an elected seat, and that's what I chose to do. So yes, and they'll be seeing this press conference, and I'll be on the phone after this press conference.
For everybody that watches us tonight on TV, could you bottom line it? Like, what do you want the takeaway to be for everybody?
The takeaway to be for everybody that this doesn't happen again. Like I said, deadly force is our last resort. And this subject is still alive. He'll be facing the consequences in jail. The bottom line that people want to know is not what we're doing down the road to keep our community safe. What are we doing when we're done and we're away from the cameras? What are we doing right now? Because people in Bernalillo County and in Albuquerque and the city limits, they don't feel safe right now. We can hear about crime stats, and I'm doing data analysis. I'm going to give you some really bad news. The data isn't good, and I'm comparing it. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It will become violent before it becomes more peaceful, because we're dealing with people that don't want to go back to jail, and the sheriff's office is sending a message to each one of these criminals. We're coming, man. I keep telling you we're coming, and I'm tired of it. I can't even walk down the street in my own place in Ventana Ranch without seeing drag racing, a crime in front of me, a domestic violence, narcotics use, going downtown in the central corridor where we've been hitting, and seeing people shoot up in the middle where kids are. It's irritating and it's frustrating. And our job and why I was elected is to start handling those problems and assisting and doing it the correct way.
Is there any strategy that police have to have rounds in some sectors or counties that are more violent than others?
As far as, you mean like kind of like a warrant roundup?
Yeah.
Or, like I said, you always look at the data and the hot spots, and that's one of the things we have in City Connect with our website. Where are the hot spots in Albuquerque and within Bernalillo County? But you have to look at just further in crime. Why are those hot spots? What resources are they? Is it the unhoused? Is it mental health? Is it drug addiction? Is it everything condensed into one thing? Where do we need to go and what resources, where do we need to focus on? Organized retail crime, that's huge funneling. We did an operation last night, and within the first 33 minutes of the operation, we have 3 arrests, to where Victoria's Secret is losing $4,000 to $5,000 a month. Their employees don't feel safe, and then we go over here to the Kohl's, and they're losing the same amount. Their employees don't feel safe, and they can't even walk to their vehicles because of all the auto theft here in Albuquerque. The hot spots are everywhere in Albuquerque.
Okay, so he brings up retail theft. The big problem with retail theft, why am I, God dang, I can't talk. Retail theft, the big problem with that all across the nation is these retail companies neutering their loss prevention officers, restricting them in what they're able to do. That is why they're having such a huge crime rate. They're not policing their own. Literally, their loss prevention are observe and report now. There are some places that still allow loss prevention to go hands-on, but a lot of big chains, they don't allow it. It's too much of a liability for them. So they have the practice of calling the local police. Let's push the liability off onto the local police. Let's let them come deal with stuff. What I think needs to happen with that is I think chief law enforcement officers need to tell these places, look, we're done being the ones always trying to catch these people. You need to start doing your own work. For example, here in Kentucky, merchants can detain shoplifters. In fact, it's written in the Kentucky law that it is unlawful to resist a detainment from a merchant. It is unlawful to resist. Other states have very similar laws. What chief law enforcement officers need to do is tell these retail stores, either you start letting your people catch people, or we're just not going to come out during an active call, and we're going to tell you to come to our station Monday through Friday during business hours and bring in your security tapes and all the information you got, and we'll start a file. We'll start a case. But we're not going to send officers out in the wild on a live call to your store just because your loss prevention people see someone on camera stealing stuff and you're failing to do anything about it. So the retail theft problems is on the retail people themselves, because they want to refuse to allow loss prevention to do their jobs.
And again, I hate to be negative, but I'll always be upfront and transparent with you. The crime is bad. It's worse than I thought. Now we can address it.
Just that bullet that went through the windshield, do we know where it went and it got embedded into, or where it went through? Like, was it the headrest or the chair? Do you know that?
I do know that it traveled through the headrest, and afterward it did not exit the vehicle.
Okay. Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for being with us here this afternoon. Again, I encourage you to stop by before you leave today. Get with Jamie so she can get you that thumb drive. Encourage you to IPRA, the full videos, the case file, etc. If you have any further questions, we'll be happy to answer those at that time. Thank you very much.
All right, so they call it IRPA. I don't know what IRPA is. That must be like their state's open records laws or something like that. Not much else to talk about with this video. So if you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.